Good morning, Professor Sivamohan. Welcome to our fourth Debasa program. This is a program in which I discuss a significant article in English, well, generally in Sinhala, and if I have the chance, speak with the writer as well, right? And that conversation can go in either languages or both. So I'll be discussing with you in English today because I found that there's a lot of interest, even among the English listeners, about any article that goes in, right? So Professor Sumathy Sivamohan, I basically know as a writer, whom I admire very much. And I remember being shortlisted with you about 20 years ago, Sumathy, and also losing to you, which hurt at that time, but I'm fine with it now because of what a good writer you are. And also you won the Gratiaen, you're a poet, you're a dramatist, and you're an activist and many other things. By profession, you're a professor of English at the Peradeniya University. So as a great admirer of your work, both the creative work and the academic work, I'm extremely honored to have you here. Right. So today, what I have picked is an article that you had written to set the terms of what a group of academics have got together and called the Kuppi Talks, right? So I just got a printout of that, the very first article, the logo that you used about it. Our discussion today won't be on Kuppi Talks, right? Because soon there will be others. You can talk, Sumathy. All of us are doing it with, the home. I have cats moving up and down, so don't worry. It's very informal. Okay. So others will come to talk about Kuppi Talks, but I will talk about this article in which you spoke about setting the terms of the debate on education, right? And that was like an introductory article, after which many people wrote on different disciplines, but always connected to education, especially tertiary education, and what's happening there. And in fact, the very first article that I discussed in the Debasa program was Harshana Ramukwalla's Decolonizing Education, a few critical thoughts. So that was also part of the Kuppi Talk series. And that is what made my attention be caught by the very relevance of this series of articles that this group writes. So today I won't talk about Kuppi Talks. That will be done by different people next time. But I am going to term this, Professor Sivamohan, if that's okay, I will rephrase it like as what is education? And then I will do that because what you have done here basically is give us a look at education in ways which unfortunately are not very often found in the education sector itself, whether you take it at school or university level, because you've taken education out of a very restrictive, thin field. It has been, stuffed into right now and just broken off all barriers and told us, look at it this way. Right? So before I air this program, I'll be discussing this in Sinhala. So I won't be explaining this again here, except ask you a few relevant questions where we have the fortunate ability to ask you yourself, to expand on some of the thoughts. So, Sumathy, I love the fact that you started with a quote of a student, because this has happened to me as well. I have heard, in fact, even poetry of a girl who used to shiver in my English class, and I do poetry in class, and she turned a poem to her own self, applicable to her own context, right? So you have started with this line, free education is not something in the sky, I can touch it, I can feel it. That's poetry, right? And in fact, your whole discourse was quite poetic. I'll deal with that in my Sinhala program. Can you tell me why that touched you so much, Sumathy, for you to start with that quote that this child gave? And the quotation is, free education is not something in the sky. I can touch it. I can feel it.
Yes. And when I read this, I thought like free education had been, in a limited sense at least, successful. because this is a student who is, and like a majority of students, this was not an English program. It's a writing skills program, which we did for the English department conducted for all the English medium students. So they were studying in English, but they were not coming from they were not English literature language students. So their English was not was quite, I don't want to say weak, they were learning English, right? So the writing skills class was actually a lot of like very basic English, I must say, although it was supposed to be advanced writing skills, like how to, conceptualize a thought. A lot of it was also very basic English teaching. And what I thought was, this student is bringing her body, herself, her culture. When I say her culture, her socio-political, her circumstances, into an articulation, into a saying in English. She's bringing her entire being into, and instead of saying maybe things like, Harry went to Kensington Palace or something, or on his day out, or whatever it is, that I'm parodying this a bit, Mother Bhashane. I am, so maybe we don't have textbooks saying that any longer. We may have, a day at the zoo or something like that, which is so much better than Harry going somewhere. But at the same time, she is articulating a desire, a thought, something about a parents, a school, everything in this two lines. This is an essay. It was not meant to be a poem, but I can see she's struggling. It's because she is struggling with the language, and because her English, quote unquote, is not perfect. She is turning, making a sentence that's so beautiful. If somebody's English was good, I think that person wouldn't have written like this. I mean, good in the way we think of good sentences. Because she doesn't she doesn't know her English in the way we think people should know, she's come up with a perfect sentence for me, or for this articulation. And I think sometimes you should not know the language wherever you are, always learning the language. There's no end point to the language. Yeah.
I think, Sumathy, that itself is such an inspirational thing for learners to believe, that sometimes not knowing it makes you struggle with it so much that it becomes your own, in a way that there are no perfect speakers, but a more fluent speaker might not even consider.
Yeah,
so that the struggle itself creates art or authenticity in that sense, that language is hers totally. Yeah. And because I'm a language teacher dealing with people whose English is even less than your level, I have seen this happening. When they speak, they're speaking with their whole being, their whole soul, and they've like physically made the language theirs, right? And then you go through that to the universities. How much it means, how much free education means. We don't need to go there because that's common knowledge, but free education was. And you tell this sentence that at the moment there is a crisis, both of education and in education. And you define these two very well. The crisis of education, like the difference between those two is how we have defined education among ourselves, A. B, how within the universities, a very powerful corporate lingo, a corporate culture has come in, right? Which puts into danger the very cornerstones of education as it should be. Right? So the democratization process is something that is increasingly being challenged when we try to use words like employability or skills within education which really doesn't give us space to look at education in that broader philosophical sense. Shall I first deal with that particular danger, which I have consistently seen the Kuppi group talk about, make policies on and appeal to the ministries to say, stop this, because this is not only what education is. Can I ask you, Professor Sivamohan, to first define those two terms, crisis in education and the crisis of education?
Madhubhashini, you may call me.
I do.
Sumathy.
Yes,
Sumathy. Yeah, I know. I wanted to
become formal, and then I call you Sumathy anyway. Yes. Sorry, Sumathy.
yeah,
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So one is education is for the whole being and for society. So we have the education that is a social thing. Access to education. How wide, and those broad aims of it are not, we can't dismiss this economic imperative. We should not. That doesn't make sense, right? Yes. And then people would accuse you of being this elite, this part of this elite group that anyway is going to be to have a job, but that's not. The free education and the kind of whole Kanangara, the post Kanangara period, or the Kanangara reforms and post that wave, was meant to uplift a community or communities that did not have access in multiple forms. They did not have access in terms of financiality or in terms of what it was about, where it would take them, not only to another class or job security or whatever it is, but also enable a community to understand what is this world about and whether that world is for them or against them. To understand something, okay, this is happening. I mean, the cost of the prices are rising, and why? I mean, maybe they are rising because of something. I mean, but also why does your neighbor talk in Tamil or Sinhala, or what is this song? What does it mean? I mean, who are you as a Sri Lankan citizen? I mean, when you go to a Kachari, Pradeshya Sabha, or I mean, what are your rights? And that is connected to whether you're getting a job. They are not separated. This all, So your child is learning a song in Sinhala, Tamil, English. That is connected to whether you will be able to get a job also. So I don't want to dismiss altogether this imperative, this need that people have. Will I get a job? I think that's very important. We should hold on to it without dismissing. But what job is one question. What is the route to that job? And it's not job, it's going to be jobs. It's going to be to participate in the economy of a country, in the culture of a country. Without okay, I go for an interview, I face that interview, I get a job. That's all. It doesn't let me understand anything else. I mean, so that's the crisis in education. So we have lost sight of that, and losing sight of that means, in my thinking, and this is what Kuppi Talk has been discussing a lot, losing sight of that broader social need and desire, the citizenship aspect, means more and more people are going to be shut out from this citizenship battle, the citizenship desire, struggle. Because citizenship has to will prepare people to function in a very diverse world where there are so many contradictory things happening, it's not like one thing that is happening from, A to B or something like that. It's going to take so many routes. It's cultural, political, economic, imaginative, global, local, village, town, and in that, I mean, you also should be able to kind of acquire skills that are fundamental as well, cognitive, rather than, list certain items that are just routine things.
Right. Given the fact that we seem to have lost sight of that, give us some examples of what you would say fundamental knowledge, Sumathy? Because education has become more memorizing and sitting the exam, say the O-levels or the A-levels. So I think we have really lost touch about what education should mean. Where, you fundamental, what you as a human is decided about that. So is it even the concept of citizenship that is not discussed, when it really should, the basic things has even to go before O-levels to school? Is that something that you might think of as an example?
Yeah, so exam oriented is one thing, because we are in so much into, I think, there's no discussion of an issue that they are given in this kind of Freirean, what Paulo Freire has talked about, the banking method of education, which I'm sure was there before too. I don't want to romanticize and glorify what was there without there should be we should look at it critically. But the citizenship desire battle is about, say, if you're learning history, you learn it in a dynamic way, so you can compare, you can the stories are not fixed. You can have a conversation with the fellow class, your student and your teacher, and maybe even deviate from what the textbook says, right? So that's when it comes to language, again, can we use language creatively? Okay, so it might be harder when it comes to basic sciences, but still there has to be a conversation going on here. There has to be a conversation between, and then you go outside the classroom and then you have a play. That the play is going to help you understand your biology or your Tamil or your Sinhala or your history. This is that historical, this is from history, but this person is coming with another kind of story that challenges this historical narrative. Geography, this is the place I belong to, this is the place you come from, this is the place I come from. And now some of it might be there in the earlier stages, but it's so very mechanically done with that exam oriented with that exam orientation. So everything is now reduced to very static answer, like, you answer something, in a like a right or wrong answer. I mean, that's how it is interpreted. Now, at the university level, what happens is, it's also because of large numbers. Discussion is not a salient, not an important part. It's not a fundamental part of a curriculum. Once you have discussion, you're going to open up what you know. I had an English student who was also teacher. She was teaching the hoteliers English, and she was asked to teach so many different, this is what is eaten here, this is what. And she said some students were saying, oh, we eat bats. You know what I mean? We eat like from the forest. And first she was like, no. This was long before COVID. But then she kind of started thinking, okay, people come with their knowledge, they have knowledge. And once you incorporate that and have a discussion on food, your whole worldview may change. Right? It's not geared toward what French cuisine or something like that. Right? I mean, we have been eating and we don't eat the same thing also. And it relates to our socioeconomic background, our cultural background, where we live. Then you understand geography, and things like that. So, and then that it also then helps you form a collective consciousness, just not an individual. Today in education, we are forcing a certain level, and very artificial level of individuality. Although teamwork is one of those things that is there, we are not really doing teamwork. We are forcing a very dumb, reduced and high, meaningless kind of individualism and individuality. Eye contact and interpersonal skills are not really interpersonal skills. It's very superficial. Interpersonal skills will emerge once you start discussing these things. Have a little argument, but it's okay. I mean, okay, now we have to be in a class. We can't argue all the time. Let's close this. I mean, the teachers are not trained for that. And then the teachers will get very scared if there's a discussion, because they may not know the answers. And that's okay not to know all the answers. And you create knowledge collectively. And so, I mean, English is also taught in a very this right and wrong way, right? I mean, I have done like workshops and worked with English teachers, and they are scared to say, oh, that's okay. Some deviation from the grammatical norm. I was like, it's okay. If a student says wind instead of one, I would say that student has learnt the rule. And there's nothing. So I was telling another student of mine too, who's teaching, there's no wrong here. You're always struggling and learning. It's always a learning. But teachers, I don't know. I mean, English teaching has changed over time, but still, teachers are very fixated on right and wrong. This is right, this is wrong.
The question of standardizing language, Sumathy, let's not get in there now. That's a different. I'm hoping within this program to discuss Arjuna Parakramas, the hegemonizing language standards as well. That's another hugely diverse thing. But getting back into education, the word shallow that you used, the narrowing down of some concepts, which we have, like even teamwork, it's taken as a very, as you say, eye contact, how much time the other person is given to talk and all that. We've lost the philosophical bent in many things. And that's one of the reasons. Let's get to the question of education being now defined in terms of employability and skills, almost numerical, almost statistics, right? And as you have said, all of us are, excuse me, Pradeep is having a class alongside me. All of us are, we are also now as teachers made to fill umpteen forms about, what you have called the corporate lingo, right? So whatever the employee, as you say, it's not that it's not important. It's very much a part of what we are supposed to do. We are accountable for what they will do after they get a degree. But lastly, I will discuss with, what employability means. I'll leave that for last. But for the moment, let's step back here. The shallowness of some of the way we define terms, like employability. Okay, can you discuss a little bit about what you meant here?
Employability is meant here, and I don't think anybody knows, because nobody has done let me start with what employability, what they mean by employability and why there's a contradiction. If you look at research on availability of jobs are available mostly in the garment and security sector. This formal jobs, not agriculture, fishing. I mean, that's a different kind of occupational thing. But in this, and those are working class jobs. So when they say employability, I don't know what that this is going to give you a job. I don't trust that. because they haven't done their research properly. And science, and people are also migrating, all kinds of people, you know, in all walks of life. So I think there's a big disconnect here. So let's not go into that, but I want to flag that also, you know, that where are the jobs? So this is some abstract notion taken from World Bank, or I don't know what, that this will give you a job, and you keep repeating it. Experts come and say it all the time, that everybody comes to believe it. And what is meant by employability is actually, to me, it is fairly empty. You know, the skills. They want people to acquire certain skills of writing, talking, listening, then understand an issue, and all of that, which is already in the package, or whatever it is we have been doing for donkey's years, right? I mean, you have to read, you have to listen, you have to write, you have to articulate, but the transformative is not there. They don't look to the transformative. So what happens is, instead of their stated aim that a student will be performing well or something like that, what they are looking for is the student will perform like every other student in the most deadening, unimaginative way possible. I mean, that's how it is, because we have to tick boxes saying this batch of students will do this. This batch of students will do this. So there is no room, if we follow that, for any kind of transformation. You move from this student to other student mentally, cognitively, right? There's no. So you may acquire, you might today know that Sri Lanka is an island. Tomorrow you might know it is dry zone and wet zone and hill country. That is all you are going to know in this. I mean, that's the acquisition of knowledge. I mean, what do you do with that knowledge? You know, do you then try to understand it in a particular way using sociological or natural principles? And if you do that, you and I should not be doing it the same way. But that transformative sense is not built into these objectives. So what is happening is, you are a docile workforce is what is asked for. It's a workforce.
And the word docile, I think, is crucial. That you do not question, you do not upset the apple cart, that you do not challenge. Yeah. And what's really disturbing about that, Sumathy, is that we ourselves are the facilitators to make people such, because it's coming to education now. And that's truly disturbing if we do not resist it, right? But what do we do when we are also caught within the same system that this comes into as instruction?
Yeah, so that's when Kuppi Talk was born, actually, because we had been doing, I mean, you do your fantastic channel, and there are other people do it. There are so many efforts, different kinds of efforts at challenging this within and outside the university. But we found that we were kind of always like, at one point, always challenging, always reacting to this directives from the ministry or UGC or from the university, without really moving forward in this challenging. Or it's too diffused and diverse. So we might do a webinar, and after 2 months, we might do the same webinar, same questions, everything is the same, So then we came up with this idea of pulling all this together. And the Kuppi Talk column, I think, was very important, because it gave us this sustained, a continuity that we could sustain. And whether we do a webinar or a statement or some action inside the university, sexual violence, whatever it is, this the island, the Kuppi Talk, that column will give us that sense of continuity where you move from one thing to another, keeping this principle. So I was really glad that you know asked Harshana and others and me, because we can see that the quote unquote, I don't want to call it a message, but the message is spreading, and also we are widening the group, we and you, that's kind of amenable, that will wants to listen to this, wants to talk about this. So I think that more and more, and also now more and more people in the university are willing to talk about this. And that I don't say that's because of Kuppi Talk, but I remember once Hasini, one of the Kuppi Talk columnists from, yeah, she wrote on these forms, two forms, new forms that are we are being asked to do, where we have to plan for every week. We have to say what we are going to, the form asks us to say what we are going to do for every, in a lesson, in a course, what we are going to do every week in a minute detail, not the topic, but what will be the NVQ level we would achieve for that week. So if we, are we going to do, like, I mean, if it's ethnography or something like that, or, I mean, or a poem, or what do you call ancient history, or part one or something like that. What will the student do in the minutest detail? So Hasni wrote about it in the island. And then it was shared among the teachers, and so many people as a forum supported it. And the discussion ensued. And then so many people then started, I mean, they had started questioning before, but a probationary lecturer writing to the papers about this, I think kind of might have shamed, it shamed me. I don't know about others. And so then people kind of got the act together, and we have now had discussions on those forms. So we can see some very concrete results also. Sometimes these results you can't really, they're long term. But
I'm going to divert a little bit about these forms and the classification. If you even take the census, Sumathy, right? And Professor Vikramasinghe has documented how it was actually the census, which the British census, that classified ethnicity so clearly in the country also. So this classification, these statistics, these columns, right? That we still don't seem to have got out of that framework as being the only accepted framework for getting things done, so to say, right? Is that connected to the fact that we still need to fill these forms and explain ourselves in numbers and levels, which seem to pervade the university system right now? Are we still caught within that system that came to us from maybe the West? Because the World Bank is the
very,
West.
very much so. I mean, at the philosophical, political, ideological sense, yes. Everything has been boxed and classified and leveled and all that. But what is happening today is another level of that, which is management, audit management. The audit does not understand the nature of education, I think. So they can only and I don't know who gave them the power to manage education, but somehow that has happened because the state is financing us, or I don't know. I also think it also comes from this corporatization where everything has to be turned into a value, monetary value. Time is money, money is time, or whatever it is. Everything has to have a monetary value or quantifiable. So for some reason, audit management from above is the one that's forcing us to account for our time in this monetary ways, in this quantifiable ways. And then when you ask, some people say, okay, some people don't teach, they don't come for class and all that.
Yeah, that it's to actually catch that lot that all this comes. That is another argument you can make.
To be honest, those who supposedly don't teach, and they are people, I would think, by and large, people who have anyway some links to some powers that be at some level. It's not the probationary lecturers, the junior staff who can afford to do that. So there is something wrong in our hierarchical system. Instead of tackling that, we are tackling something called the educational principle. Instead of tackling a social structural problem, where they say that professors would give junior professional lecturers to teach their stuff and get away with it. That's a different. That problem cannot be solved by saying, what is the NBQ level for this or that or whatever it is. So, and again, management, because audit understands and the corporate structure understands money and not principles. Not discussion. You cannot put value on a discussion, no? On an essay and the quality of an essay or whatever it is. I mean, the critical element. They have to turn this into, so I mean, now we have learned to work around it in some way, but the pressure on us is so much that we can't really, unless we pose a direct challenge at all this. So that's, I want to qualify something about the workforce. I mean, workers, I think, are creative. When they, but it is the kind of a management idea of a workforce that is docile.
That's the kind of idea that's being also propagated within the universities. For example, now the current look at trade unions in the extremely negative first framework within which is discussed. But that is also about critical thinking, engagement with your place, right? But so the way you have defined citizenship, which I didn't get to hear because I would do that in Sinhala, that we have forgotten what it means to be engaged citizens, right? What does it mean? Is it the getting of the margins into the center, the centering of the peripheries, how vital those things are. And that is what education should be about, empowerment of the powerless, because free education gave us a brilliant way of actually getting the state system is there. But now within that, if we forget empowerment of the powerless, we've lost why it was put in place in the first place. So could you talk a bit about the citizenship, what it means and what education can do within that, within giving all of us a sense of who we are, right? Because as you said, transformation is not even in the conversation now. I always tell people, if you read a good book, the person who finishes the book shouldn't quite be the person who started the book. You've got to change in a little way. So is it with education. If the same person who got into campus leaves with nothing within him changed, then what have we taught him? Yes, his knowledge may have been increased in disciplines. Yes, it has to be discipline based also, but the overall person. This discussion takes a very different color when you talk about science and medicine, Sumathy. That's something I realized quite recently. But let's keep it to the arts for the moment, okay. Right? What is an arts graduate? Who is a humanities student? And then what is the citizenship development that we can do? Could you discuss a little bit about that?
Well, I will start off with me being a teacher, and for me in a class, I want to, I don't know whether I'm always successful, but I look for the person who is the most marginalized to see whether she can be brought into the center. I mean, sometimes you are quiet, you are silent because you are just listening. I mean, that's a different matter. But you are silent because you feel disempowered. That has to be attended to, not just because of that student, for the rest of the students as well. You know, so, and how do you do that? I mean, what is the knowledge she's coming with into the, what is she bringing into the classroom, right? And then through that, we create, by bringing her into the center, we create a corpus of knowledge that then challenges our ideas of knowledge. So that's in the classroom. When I was teaching in America, for instance, I was teaching basic English part of the time, like writing, basic writing. There was a student from Hawaii. I mean, they did presentations and all, I know, and there was this student from Hawaii who then spoke of his, the Hawaiian dialect, which is very different, you know. I may be saying something very wrong also. I don't think there's a Hawaiian dialect, but I don't want to say anything that's wrong also. So I'm very boldly, you know, putting this, whatever his language that he speaks, which is not a native language. It's a mix of English and other languages and the native languages as well. But it's very different. It's like some kaka kukila like that. But he explained that. But it's a dialect and it's slang as well. So it's a Creole and slang and dialect and all of this. As a language person, you would know what is different. But what I thought was, for this, all these white American students, where it was predominantly white American student, this person from Hawaii talking about his language at that time in an English classroom, I thought it was very empowering, both for him. And that was the first time he also came out quite excitedly. And, you know, I mean, came out means quite engaged in it. Yeah. In the class discussion. So that's, I'm just being in an American. So I'm thinking of this, starting with the classroom. What does citizenship mean in a classroom? I mean, I do something called, I'll speak a little concretely, Mother Bashani. Okay, so we do this. This English is broken here. Cocofaskos, that, you know, cage. I will send you that article if you know, this performers who are in they're like native people, native islanders, and, you know, Hispanic. This couple, their performers, they put themselves in a cage in a museum, and people come and watch, and you would be horrified to see. I mean, it's very illuminating, the responses of the people who come. You know, it's like you think that you're back in Columbus's time, the responses. But then, so all the students are like, yeah, this is racism, this colonialism. Then I ask, you know, have you been, I mean, when a prison van passes you by on the road, don't we all turn and look? You know, and then they all said, and, you know, and I find it difficult to talk about in class. I say, you know, have you been taken from your Candy school or whatever, to see where the settlement or Adivasi? Of course, I don't know whether any of them are Adivasis also. So I have this struggle, and I say, oh, some of you maybe, I don't know whether I am. I have some, you know, but then they all giggle embarrassedly, and I say, what is this? I mean, you know, so then we have that whole conversation. This is not happening only in America and colonialism and all that. This is happening, this colonial mentality right in a midst. And I always worry, I mean, maybe there's a bad student there, and then we are talking about it, we are now othering her, not allowing. So how do you create that space for any people who are not confident that they would be accepted in the same way others are? So,
Can you repeat the name of the couple, because I did not catch it?
Fasco is the one who, I don't know whether I'm saying it. I was a bit reluctant to say. I don't know whether I'm saying it.
Could you spell it for me?
Cocofusco.
Yes. Okay.
I will send you that article.
Please do. I'm completely unfamiliar with that name, so I just wanted to clarify for the listeners as well. So they are performance artists who put themselves in a cage to be gazed at by others, which is like
in a museum. So there's in a museum.
Right. And in fact, because I'm targeting people who might not know that this actually happened during colonialism, where, you know, Black people were taken to the West and actually put as exhibits. So that, you know, and it was okay, like Black women were gazed at. So that this is actually in the present to hark back into things that happened, which were really horrible, where you gaze at somebody you call the other. And in fact, what you did was tell that we still do it, you know, we still, so to make it present, that these are not things in the past which are gone and finished, that in fact, we also still do it. If you see the prison van move, you still gaze at them, and that's a form of what happened even before. So I just wanted to just say it simply so that people here would also understand what you are referring to. Yes, Sumathy, please.
And also, so it doesn't happen too much now. I think people are a little more aware, but in a predominantly singular classroom, I mean, if I start talking about gender or oppression or whatever it is, we have this issue, we discuss issues. Everybody will turn and look at the Muslim woman.
Right.
You know, it may be easy. And then how do you open it up? Of course, once it's opened up, then other views will come. But you have to put yourself right in there and challenge and discuss. And it doesn't happen too much now. I think with rising Islamophobia, people have also become a little more aware of what it means also, maybe, no?
Right, maybe. But it could also be within the campus context. People might be more aware. Doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, you're in a specialized context anyway, you know, who people who have read and realized about that. Right. So the city within campus.
So I just want to say something. When after the Easter bombings, there was a student from another student, a Muslim student, but not part of English. She was, you know how security works. No, sometimes for totally unnecessary reason, security can target you. Maybe because of the work you do, where you live, or whatever. So she was getting targeted, and she had to go to the CID and all. It was some of my students who, you know, who contacted me and asked me. I didn't know her. Can you help her? You know, because you're a teacher. And so I felt that these students are very concerned and caring.
And those were non-Muslim.
They're non-Muslim students, yeah.
Right.
And they're singular students. They don't speak Tamil. This student maybe she may know singular, but I mean, she's not in a, I mean, she's studying in the Tamil medium,
Okay. So Sumathy, sometimes just like the students, we also are engaged in we should be engaged in making people better citizens, right? And that's where education should actually, for me, go. And that is one of the things that you're raising here. Is that what we're actually doing? Is that what we're allowed to do, right? And I love the discussion that you make. And, you know, the calling of education dynamic and not just reproduction of knowledge. So the exam system, I mean, it's a very old debate. You know, what do exams do? They're just checking memorization. So we don't need to even go there, because everyone knows, even to get into campus, it might be the person who remembers most rather than the person who is educated. So what is it to be educated itself now is a very dicey, probably unphilosophical answer. For you, what is it to be an educated person, Sumathy? What is it to be an educated person at A level? What is it to be an educated person at degree level? Would you have a rough idea of how these can move dynamically if we are to take away what is and what should be? Tell me the should be.
Again, I'll speak a little autobiographically. I was thinking of this a little bit. I did Tamil for my A level. I did English, history, economics, Tamil. Uh, I don't think I was the best student in Tamil, but my father had this ideal that I'm going to be a linguist, language scholar, and all that. So he said, you may want to do at that level. I didn't know what I wanted to do also, so I did Tamil. Then between the A levels, I was in Tamil. I was okay. I was an average student in that in the A level. I was not a big, but I mean, I'm not a crammer also, so I a bit happy-go-lucky. Between the mocks, I mean, our school has a mock exam for the A levels, and between that and the actual exam, I got very bored. I could not study. So my brother-in-law was a collector, and he had all these modern Tamil novels. I mean, at that time, in the late 70s. So I started reading those because I was really bored with, you study the same thing over and over. And then one of the questions was about, I was doing it because I was bored. Nobody asked me to read it. My mother was like, what is this? You're staying up and reading these novels, without studying and all that. And then at the exam, there were a couple of questions, and I had read all the up-to-date novels just by sheer luck because I was bored. I was not studying. Now, I don't know whether that's going to work every time, but what I'm saying, so it was dynamic. You say my answer probably showed. I got a very high mark for Tamil, and everybody was amazed.
You were lucky to have an examiner who did that. Huh? I'm just saying it can easily go the wrong way also.
Right.
Your paper went to a very traditional marker. So
I think that there were questions on the modern Tamil literature, and also there was a question on the social. I still remember because it made a huge impact on me. Social impact of literature.
That's the thing. So the point is whether we also encourage our students, depending on our knowledge level, not to say anything that we may not know. So there's always this danger right now of a really out of the box thinking student being penalized. Because we also might be, without knowing, telling them within what limits they should be answering.
Yeah.
So that's why I said you're very lucky to have got someone who marked you on things that you put in beyond the syllabus. Because we ourselves might be propagating the idea that you stick to what has to be said.
No, I think at that time, that leeway was there. Now, I don't know whether it's there now.
Okay.
I mean,
yeah,
they were trained, I think lecturers trained the markers properly.
That system is very much there still.
But I don't know whether it goes to the teacher, whether it's transferred to the teachers.
Let's take University Sumathy, because that is where we are familiar with. Do we, I'm in the DELT, so there's nothing much I can say because we are very much within the thing. But you're in disciplines, right? Other disciplines, would they then accept things that, like newest knowledge, they also may not have read? Would the student go read it and put it into the exam?
In our discipline, we can, no?
Because it's English. No, I guess no, it's not fair to ask you because we are not in other.
We should. I mean, whether it's history or geography. I mean, sometimes a student talks about an idea, or I also learn all this kind of this youth jargon and all. I constantly ask them what it is. But they also talk about a novel. Sometimes I am not very interesting stuff that I had not even heard of. So I then go and read that stuff so that I would be able to supervise or even suggest something. So we have to be, I mean, lecturers have to be constantly learning. And sometimes you don't know, that doesn't matter, because the student should be able to, you and the student should be able to draw out a certain trajectory of principle. So you can say, I don't know, but what are you trying to say here?
Openness. Openness, the democracy within the classroom.
Yeah.
And
so
that
if you know your framework, that's the problem with Madhubhashan. We don't have a framework for this analysis. Once you have a framework, It doesn't matter if you don't know this, that line of thinking. Student might say, that critic is saying, oh, I read this in the newspaper the other day, there's a discussion. Then if you have a framework, then you will say, okay, what do you mean? Why did they say that? And then the student will have to, support that, defend it, challenge it with you, right? But I don't know whether we're still working with those frameworks.
Yeah, because challenge is taken as a threat. That's one of the mistakes I think we make very often. If someone challenges our knowledge, we immediately, when I say it's all of us as well, we see the threat. While as for me, education, especially tertiary education, is about critical thinking. It's about arts, more about asking the right question than giving the right answer.
Yeah.
It's my series of Katikavi interviews will take me now next to Professor Malavigi and then, Dean of the Faculty of Medicine, where I discuss other stuff as well. Because I found, because I'm sometimes invited to give talks to teachers who teach English in the science faculty, that sometimes we assume general things that they may not be familiar with. And I was quite startled sometimes to see how much we take for granted as people knowing, and they don't. Because Sumathy, in our school system, at the age of 16, we diversify children. So that someone who goes to science from the age of 16 may not be open to a short story or an art film. Medical, definitely they are not, because they don't have the time. So that we kind of forget that things we think is general knowledge may never have got to them, because honestly, from the age of 16, the commerce people, the science people, the management people are diversified. That's our system. So that I found quite startling. The incident which I had to face, that things we take as default mode knowledge is very unfamiliar. So that's again another question that the two of us don't have to answer. But even within the university, humanities field, the arts, the social sciences, at least there, the ability to question, the ability to challenge, because that's how knowledge moves, if I'm correct. If we keep on reproducing what we have, right? So Sumathy,
collective endeavor. I just want to say something about the citizenship, because you asked that. I would say that instead of this very insular individual mode of citizenship, if free education and education is a collective mode of, it enables a collective mode of citizenship in which individuals can thrive, in their own different ways, but not in this stultified, reduced sense of individuality that turns you into a robot, actually.
Robots are very easy to control, Sumathy. So let me now move on to, move down. And you're saying the myth of the unemployable graduate, right? I would have explained this in Sinhala. Why is it a myth, Sumathy?
That the graduate is unemployable. Nobody is unemployable. I'm not going to be a doctor. Nobody's going to employ me as a doctor, but that we should not start there, right? That's not the issue. You are a person and you're learning something. And how do you become? This is not, I cannot eat, this is stale bread, I cannot eat this, but that's not what a person is. Right? These are, people are all the time learning. So that itself, having that branding somebody is unemployable is taking the humanity away from that student. That the student is not learning, that student is in a state of, I don't know, paralysis or unintelligent or whatever it is. You cannot say that, particularly after bringing them up to this level, and you're saying you're unemployable. There's something wrong with you. You are probably unemployable for saying that. These are the people at the top. I think they're somehow unemployable people. I'm turning it around. The unemployable people who have been given a job because of the power they wield. So that's one myth. I want to ask again and again, where are the jobs? They are centered in, these corporate jobs are centered in urban areas, particularly Colombo. Right? So when they say unemployable, I mean, I don't know, they want everybody to move to Colombo. Is that it? And even then if everybody moves to Colombo, then there are no jobs for everybody. I mean, they have not done their math or their economics or whatever it is. This is all coming. You see, World Bank does they have a global format for the third world. They don't have local format. Then they take the numbers and somehow fit them into the third world format. World Bank doesn't have formats for the UK and USA, no, it's for the third world. And one mass thing where you are looked at from outside. So that's and then this unemployability comes like you're a commodity, you're a good, you're a thing. And that's why I think it's very dangerous for us to.
You use that allegory even for universities. He said, you have said now we feel like we are in a supermarket selling goods for the student to come and shop. That is the shallowness we have gone into.
Yeah.
And therefore the danger, right? It's just become goods and services, supply and demand. Well, as education should be a little bit beyond that.
And I wanted to give you another very distressing thing that happened in our university. Our general degree, in the general degree, a student does 3 main subjects and subsidiary subjects. Now the number of courses for the 3 main subjects has been reduced from 6 to 4 or something like that. So it's very disheartening, distressing, and that to think, to know that once the student leaves and goes into the school education system and has to teach geography or history, that teacher's knowledge is going to be so reduced, which will be disempowering for her or him and disempowering for the student and for the entire education. And these main subjects have been, the courses have been like general courses, that are too broad and vague, and everybody, you put 800 students in one hall and teach something, So it's a very dangerous thing that's happening.
Right. Okay. So the general dumbing down of what could have been, that we could have given a better quality person. And yeah, because I was in a previous discussion that I had with a writer, he said in the 70s, the level of school teaching was so high in the schools. And he said, in fact, after the first insurgency, when it failed, a lot of those young people who were trying to fight came back into the system and taught as school teachers. And he says the level of education is unparalleled, what they were made to feel. So yes, again, we get into the question of teaching, and which is again not our discussion point here.
There was some power given to the teacher, no? I think that's also, they were empowered. Today, the teachers are not empowered as much.
And also, Sumathy, sometimes you get into teaching simply because you want to say thank you for the election help. No? What kind of, just give unemployed people teaching. So, but at least they ask for the degree, no, at that level.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so what teaching is something else. And I just want to emphasize that this is not to put myself out of this. We are all part of the system. Yeah. So we are discussing our problems, not they out there and us. We all, I don't know about you, I have umpteen faults myself. So
all of us, we also play the game, no? I mean,
we play exactly. Right. So the last part in which you have said why Kuppi is doing it is, I'm not going to touch upon because I will hopefully talk to Shamala and Ramya about that. Where we discuss within a different series, alternative spaces for education, all that. So Sumathy, just to tie it up with what I'm trying to do in this channel, education is possible anywhere, right? For anyone. It doesn't have to be within the campus system, right? And I love the fact that these articles, are they translated both into Sinhala and Tamil?
Yeah. So they are being translated into Sinhala and Tamil and published in Anidda and Ulanadu.
Right.
In Tamil, yeah.
So
they come a little late. So they don't, every second week.
Every second week, but everything that comes in English comes in Sinhala and Tamil as well.
They wanted lower word count, so it's re-edited.
I'm trying also to get and I've been very lucky. There are newspapers publishing my interviews now.
Right. Okay.
And even in
there's an interest now.
There is, because when I was talking to an editor, he said our problem is getting content, which is good. So again, word count is an issue, Sumathy. So again, I'm also trying to handle that. And one thing that with a Sinhala newspaper, they said, fine, we'll leave you out of the print, but we'll give you web space. I said, that's fine. So long as it's web space doesn't have word counts.
Oh, I see.
You see, so there are ways within that, because education is moving. And I think educators also, if we try to move with what's going on now, otherwise, I mean, this YouTube channel, even to have people like you coming and conversing, that itself is new, no? Because these are not spaces we are familiar with. Right? So it's getting education out there, Sumathy, because I think there is an interest. The problem is, how do they access it? Because that's money, State universities are free, but so few get in. Right? And there are educated people out there waiting for knowledge. And if we can help, even in a little way. And honestly, I think most of the people in universities are willing. I mean, I just have So there is so we need to bridge the gap. One thing, there's a gap in language, right? So therefore, bilingual, I wish, my regret is that I didn't know Tamil, because I would have made it trilingual.
Yeah, right.
Because there is a gap. Right? Now, Kuppi, I love the fact that was in English, but you translate it. Right? And this discussion, perhaps you're the only one, I won't be repeating the article, the interview in Sinhala, for the simple reason that, and I wouldn't ask you to say it in Tamil because I wouldn't be able to respond to you. Therefore, we are going to leave it in English. But Sumathy, for me, this article is poetry, seriously. So I will deal with each sentence a lot of sentences in Sinhala, so that they will hear you after this. And I really hope even the basically Sinhala speaking crowd will listen to you.
Okay.
And that, that they will understand what you're saying here, because we need to, if I want to recap what we did, Sumathy, we need rethink what education is, because we've forgotten the noble concept, so-called, the philosophical concept. We've brought it down to a set of skills. Leading to a job. That's it, full stop. Important, yes. Crucial, yes. But it's also within a broader framework of who you are as a citizen, who you are as a person, how you deal with problems, how you deal with each other. And I simply I have not heard that this simply and beautifully expressed as in this article, right? We've kept it a bit political. So I did not go into capitalism and wondering whether the World Bank is actually selling the neoliberal framework and whether we are caught in it, whether we like it or not, because I'm trying to keep politics out. But there is an absolute politics here, because the World Bank is selling a particular economic ideology, right? And then therefore we also have to cater to that. Okay, so I did not get into that, Sumathy, that takes us into politics, but let's leave it at the educational level, right? So can I say thank you very much?
Thanks to you. Thanks to you for this opportunity. And thanks for this conversation. It's so heartening to see that so many of us are now working on this and are thinking somewhat alike,
Yes, and there are a lot of young people who are interested, Sumathy. I get some private messages and I get comments on it where people are listening. Right? So quietly, baby steps, whether we can, all of us can, Kuppi Talks is something much bigger, but it's a baby step I am taking with this channel. But the fact that people like you are coming in to speak is very, very heartening. So is there anything you want to add into within this framework before I end, Sumathy?
No, you carry on.
I'll just explain this. Right. So then my next speech, which is with Shamala and Ramya, would explain what exactly Kuppi Talks is doing. You know, there are reading circles and all that. There's a diverse array of stuff which is freely accessible to everyone, right? And you don't, what Sumathy says about education is not restricted to campus students. If you understand that education is to transform yourself, anyone can do that. In fact, some of the people outside might do it quicker than those inside, right? At the rate we have restricted the sense of what is to be educated. So I want to leave everyone with that note of hope. And again, thank you very much, Sumathy, for your time.
Thank you.
And then